Sometimes you love a baseball team, but you just don't love some of the players that were part of your team or the management running it. That's one of the topics we'll tackle here tonight on the On Fek Circle, brought to you by JFtC and the Jays from the Couch radio podcast. We're here at least until we actually get some negotiations and a CBA together. We're here every other Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, streaming live on the Jays from the Couch YouTube channel. You can also pick up the live stream on Facebook and on Twitter. The podcast that spawned all this madness, the Jays from the Couch radio podcast, comes to you Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. It is also available on the YouTube channel live, as well as Facebook and Twitter. You can pick up, if you can't watch the live stream, you can always either go into the archives of those three places, or you can go to Stitcher, Apple, Spotify, Google, or anywhere that the finer podcasts are there. You'll find the Jays from the Couch radio podcast. And the other YouTube exclusive show, if you will, is Sunny Side of the Dome, and that's Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and is hosted by my friend and colleague, Karen Suter. Make sure you tune in this Thursday. She's going to talk about some things that she's hoping, and that Blue Jay fans should be hoping, to see coming out of this new CBA. I am the madman across the border, your Fekless host, the Fekless Wonder, Steve Fek. Thank you for joining me for another live stream on the YouTube channel of the On Fek Circle. I wish we had lots of real baseball news to talk about, but we really don't. The players outright dismissed the latest proposal by the owners, much to the chagrin, I think, of baseball fans everywhere, and even national analysts. I'm not talking about just MLB Network, but even like former players like Harold Reynolds and things like that. They don't understand, Dan, please think, they don't understand what the players union end game is here. They really don't understand what's going on. So no transactions, no Rule 5 draft, no real reason for me to criticize Ross Atkins or Charlie Montoya, which is a personal disappointment, but that's not necessarily your problem. We are going to talk tonight about some of the more hated players in Blue Jays history. I mean, everybody talks about, their all-time favorite Blue Jays, and I've referenced on several shows and on the podcast, like a Mount Rushmore, if you will. As the American correspondent, I have to go with an American monument. So the Mount Rushmore of Blue Jay players, which for me would be Joe Carter, Carlos Delgado, Dave Stieb, Roy Halladay. Those really are the standouts that should be up on Mount Rushmore. Pat Gillick, he was a GM, he was an executive. Hard to put him. He didn't really produce on the field, but he was, so valuable to the Jays as far as the building of the franchise, international signings, the farm system. He was so instrumental in getting the Blue Jays off the launching pad much quicker than a lot of expansion teams ever would. Paul Beeston, native Canadian, certainly somebody you can think of, maybe try to put on a Mount Rushmore, but I try to keep that to players. Tonight, I want to come up with, from my observation since I joined Jays from the Couch back in 2020, and having shows like this and being on the podcast and interacting with folks on Twitter and in our fan forums on JFtC.com, which, by the way, you can do when you're going to read an article. Leave us your comments, your questions, your opinions, your feelings. You can do that at JFtC.com on every article. And when we're here on a live stream, whether it be my show, the podcast on Monday, Karen Suter's show, Sunny Side of the Dome on Thursdays, let us know what you're thinking. You don't have to agree with us per se. We want this to be a conversation. 2022 really is going to be dedicated to as a year of conversation. I do the show, and it's easy for me to just babble on and on and on for 30 minutes or so. I could do a daily show, but I know that's actually I think that would be almost reason to declare national emergencies in both the U.S. and Canada if I was on every day. But we want this to be a conversation. These are shows about you. Yes, we may start the topic, we may formulate ideas, but that doesn't mean that we can't discuss other things and go other places. So as you're watching at the live stream here, if you're watching on a Tuesday, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, be more than happy to answer your questions. I do check throughout the weeks to make sure that if there are new comments that come up, I try to get to you after the fact. We can't get all of your comments up. It's not that we, don't want to hear from you. Sometimes it's just a matter of maybe it's a little bit too far off topic, or there are just too many other questions that are out there that we can't always get to it. But going back to the main theme of the show, I've observed that Blue Jay fans are not a forgiving sort. And I don't say that as a criticism. It just seems that once betrayed or once hurt, you're either like the jilted lover when a guy like A.J. Burnett or Al Leiter, historically, they were some of the less than popular free agency departures. When they leave, suddenly it's a big deal. I'm curious as to see how the Jays are going to react to Robbie Ray, who cemented his place in Blue Jays history in just a year and a half of being here, having that Cy Young Award season just past year. It'll be interesting to see, do the boos and the growlings and the comments, do they start to, are tight pants no longer a cute thing to talk about? Are tight pants going to be used as a weapon against Ray when he pitches at Rogers Center? It certainly has happened in the past. I remember very clearly Alex Rios, who had 2 All-Star seasons when he was with Toronto. Not much of a fielder, but I mean a good hitter. Okay, and he put up some great years. But he signed a big extension. He kind of tailed off a little bit. He wasn't dogging it. I don't think it was intentional. It's just that, he was turning maybe more back into Alex Rios in the mean as opposed to Alex Rios in those 2 All-Star seasons. And, fans booing him when he came back to Rogers Center. And, the basic thing is Rio sucks. I mean, but why? He wasn't bitter when he left. He didn't really make any complaints. Yes, he got into a verbal altercation with the fan. Yeah, I know, and people bring that one back up. But really, he deserved to be booed? Would you have booed Carlos Delgado when he was playing either with the Mets or the Marlins and they came back to Rogers Center? I don't think so. So there's some interesting quirks about the Blue Jays fan base. Even the fact that, I'm the American correspondent, if you will. Quite often, I shouldn't say quite often, but I have come across things where people are angry that an American is criticizing the Toronto Blue Jays. I understand, ugly American, both figuratively and metaphorically. You could apply that tag to me, but really, I don't get why. And I know that there is another site that was run by an American, and they got a lot of criticism for it for many years because there was an American running a Toronto Blue Jays site. And it wasn't just from the Bernier types. I mean, people were upset. How dare you? I mean, I understand that Blue Jay fans and back in the day, Expo fans, Canadian fans in general, especially baseball fans, kind of feel overlooked or feel put upon because everything is really what's best for the other 29 franchises, which are all U.S. based. And there's not much, they'll do revenue sharing for lower revenue teams like the Pirates and the Royals, Twins, teams that are generating major revenues, but they don't try to give any kind of offset to the Canadian-based Toronto Blue Jays because of the exchange rate between the U.S. dollar and Canadian dollars. Blue Jays pay in U.S. dollars, but they generate, I would say 90% of their revenues are generated in Canadian dollars. So I do understand that sensitivity among, Canadian baseball fans, but, I don't think it would really matter. Okay, if you want to say, Steve, you're an idiot, Fek, you have no feckin' idea what you're talking about, I'll take that, but don't criticize an American Blue Jays fan for talking about his team, rooting for his team, asking certain things of his team. I think that's a little bit unfair. But I was thinking about this idea. Who would you put not on a Mount Rushmore, on a Mount Dumpmore, I guess? Okay, who among the fan base, from my observations, these are not players that I agree with that should be the four most hated or disliked Blue Jays. That's not what this show is about. This is just an observation that I've picked up. And I'd be curious to see what you think about some of the players that we're going to talk about here. And the first player that perplexes me still as to why Blue Jay fans so dislike him is B.J. Ryan. Now, I understand maybe he didn't earn every dollar of the 5-year, $47 million contract that he signed after an all-star year in Baltimore. So you would think, well, you stole the Orioles closer. And that's a high price tag, but it's reasonable when you look at it, in its entirety. It's a reasonable contract for an all-star closer. He had his first year here was just outstanding. 38 saves. He had an ERA of 1.37, which is that's good any year. But I mean, that was a great ERA. He had a minuscule WHIP, and I'm giving ERA, yes, but WHIP to me is a very important stat when you're analyzing the effectiveness of a relief pitcher. How many hits and how many walks or hit batsmen are you issuing, which is either going to aggravate the situation that you're coming into if there's already players on base, or how many more opportunities are you giving the opponent to come in and either come from behind or steal a win from your team. So that's why I bring up the WHIP. Now, B.J. Ryan, second straight All-Star team, back in 2006. Now, he did the unconscionable in the eyes of many Blue Jay fans in that he blew out his elbow. He had to have Tommy John surgery in 2007. So he missed the whole year. When he did come back in 2008, again, he had 32 saves. ERA was a little higher, 2.75, but still respectable. 1.28 WHIP. Not bad. I mean, you would hope a little bit better, but considering a season coming off of Tommy John, I mean, you could understand maybe the command wasn't quite what was there. So that was another really solid year for B.J. Ryan. But he made the mistake of getting hurt and never being the same pitcher again after the Tommy John. By 2009, he was just so ineffective. He had an ERA close to 7. I think he had 4 or 5 blown saves in 2009 before they released him. and the Jays ate the last year and a half of his contract. It's not necessarily his fault, but when you talk about, as we have on the podcast in the past, or just talking with Blue Jay fans or on Twitter, you talk about bad signings or, disappointing performances. BJ Ryan name almost always come up, if not first, it comes up in the first minute or two of throwing names around. So I would say that BJ Ryan, if my analysis of the Blue Jays fan base is correct, BJ Ryan's one of the heads up there on Mount Dumpmore. Blue Jay fans, rightly or wrongly, will never forgive him for not being BJ Ryan. Even though they had one great season, one very good season out of the 5, it was a time, in the dark ages of JP Ricciardi, where just nothing seemed to go right. BJ Ryan is sort of that poster guy of, we can't forgive you because you weren't BJ Ryan. Kevin Biggio, if you're listening or you catch the replay, mark that down in your book, because you certainly are part of the core. And then you had a bad year and you were hurt all year last year. And now the majority of Blue Jay fans are saying, oh, he's really not that valuable after all. He's not going to be as good as we hoped. All because he had an injury shortened and injury impacted season in 2021. I certainly don't hope that for Kevin Biggio. He's one of my favorite Blue Jays by far. And if he isn't kept around, there's going to be plenty of major league teams that are going to want to give him another choice. Now, there are just some players that make it really easy to hate them. I don't know whether they go out of their way or whatever, but they're just easy to hate. And they're either so stupid or so self-absorbed or so delusional to think that they have a right to dictate how they're played, where they're played, how often they're played. Every team in the majors has a list of those guys. I kicked around Frank Thomas. He really wasn't here long enough, I think, to warrant that much hatred. But when he was mortally insulted by John Gibbons sitting his butt on the bench when he was struggling in his second year here, and complaining outwardly why, he wasn't going to allow his career to end this way. Yeah, he was released the next day after that babbling. So Frank Thomas, he's not going to be up on the Mount Dumpmore, but I can see having a bust or a statue of him sitting on the bench as you're walking up the path to Mount Dumpmore for Blue Jay fans. And of course, those of you that have followed the show over the last 2 years know that I came to the Blue Jays because a high school mate of mine, Mark Lamangelo, was traded from the Astros to the Blue Jays. Mark was a piece of work, and I don't want to dump on his off the field later legal troubles that he's rebounded from. He's a very respected little league coach now in Arizona. But he did not get off on the right foot in Toronto when he, in anger, said, "Do they speak American in Canada?" And I'm guessing, knowing Mark a little bit, Some of that came from having played in the National League with the Astros, going to Montreal, and in certain sectors, in certain shops, good luck trying to get someone to speak English, especially if you were, an American. But he it was sad. I had high hopes. That's how I came to the Blue Jays. He sealed his fate that when he got sent down to the minors after just 11 horrendous starts. He threw a phone at the manager for telling him he was getting sent down. So he was never played for the Jays again. Now, the good news with Mark, though, is that allowed JFtC to come up and make his debut. But again, Mark was only here for less than half a season, so I don't think he really deserves a spot up there. Shea Hillenbrand, he deserves a spot on Mount Dunmore. In fact, he might actually deserve a Hall of Fame place of obnoxious and evil Blue Jays. He was beyond a clubhouse cancer. I mean, it was all about Shea Hillenbrand, no matter where he played. And mind you, he could hit, he could rake. And for those of you that are Stratomatic baseball fans, he has one of the greatest Stratomatic cards ever in all of seasons against left-hand pitchers. You couldn't matter how you rolled or how you tried to cheat, you rarely got him out. But that's part of the problem. He didn't want to be platooned. He didn't think he should be platooned. So it all came to a head again in 2006. Again, the dark ages of J.P. Ricciardi. He was upset that he was being forced to DH because they had, the less talented, in his eyes, Troy Glaus at third base. He was being platooned at first with Lyle Overbay. So in July of 2006, he had the ultimate meltdown. First, he complained that he was upset because the team never congratulated him, either his teammates nor the team as a whole, in management, congratulated him on adopting a child. It could be argued that the adopted child had a higher maturity level than Shea Hillenbrand did, but for the sake of this argument, he was upset about that. And he was upset about the way he was played. John Gibbons, who I love, not everybody, every Blue Jay fan enjoys him as much as I do. You really did want to test him. When Hillenbrand came in after taking batting practice, and he put up on the board, "This is a sinking ship, and play for yourself," as a message on the board in the locker room. Gibbons got tipped off to that. Gibbons went right after him. Okay, there was a confrontation there on the field and in the dugout. Gibbons made it clear he was never going to play again, and he even said publicly after the game, after being interviewed, and to J.P. Ricciardi, "If you even think about backing up Shea Hillenbrand, I'm going to resign." And really, John Gibbons was J.P. Ricciardi's guy, so he wasn't going to let that happen. You don't do that. No matter how upset you are, okay, you don't go writing things like some 5-year-old with sidewalk chalk and writing, "This is a sinking ship," or "play for yourself." You don't do that. He burned bridges. He burned more bridges than General Sherman did in the U.S. Civil War, and that the Allies did in Europe. He burned so many bridges everywhere he played, but his moment in shame, if you will, was with the Blue Jays. And I absolutely understand why. Now, another one of my fellow Jersey Shore guys, he was 2 years behind me in high school, but he was all-state, all-shore conference pitcher, John Farrell. I think will always be hated because even though he was still under contract with the team that gave him this first shot to manage, the Toronto Blue Jays, he went to the front office and asked for permission to talk to and take the job with the Red Sox. The 2013 Red Sox, the World Series champion 2013 Red Sox. Now you have to remember, Farrell was on Terry Francona's staff for a long time as the pitching coach. So you could argue that the Red Sox really gave him his chance to show what his abilities and his things going there. But if you're under contract, you do not go to management, in this case Alex Anthopoulos, and say, I would much rather have my dream job and manage the Red Sox, our division rivals. Well, your division rivals now, Alex. I want to go there and manage the team of my dreams, the team that he cut his teeth on. You should be more angry that as part of the Jays agreeing to have John Farrell go to the Red Sox and manage them to a World Series, as well as 2 other division titles, if I'm not mistaken, that they ended up with Mike Aviles in a trade. David Carpenter for Mike Aviles was the official trade. John Farrell was almost like a player to be named later. I can understand why Blue Jay fans would feel slighted and feel hurt by that. However, that was the team that really gave him his first opportunity to shine as a coach. He was on the major league staff, was part of a World Series team for Francona on that staff. I think that was a natural deal. Like, I mean, for example, if Pete Walker had been offered the Mets managing job, and there was talk about the Mets having an interest in him because of how much he's done, the miracles he's worked in many cases as the Blue Jays pitching coach, you can understand it. I mean, I can forgive that because that's the organization that he was drafted by and grew up in. Now, mind you, it's a National League team and not a division rival. But John Farrell, certainly, there are Blue Jay fans I have no doubt would actually help chip away at his thing on Mount Dunmore. Now, the man that perhaps has generated the most lingering hate in Blue Jays history. He's another management guy. And mind you, J.P. Ricciardi should be there. Peter Bavassi, who was the first president general manager of the Blue Jays. The man who said, no, I want to hang on to a 33-year-old sore-armed Bill Singer. We don't really want Ron Guidry. Peter Bavassi, the guy who, together with his dad, who was the GM of the Angels, thought it would be really cool to fire their managers together while the Jays were playing in Anaheim the same day. He deserved hate. Alex Anthopoulos, by far, may be the most despised executive, if not the despised person in Blue Jays history. Because he sold the farm to try to win in 2015, which is what general managers are supposed to do. But when you think about it, other than Noah Syndergaard and Matthew Boyd and Daniel Norris, Syndergaard probably having the biggest impact, how many of the guys that he traded really had great major league careers? They got David Price for Norris and Boyd. Josh Donaldson deal. Okay, Jeff, who did they really? Franklin Barreto? No. Brett Lowry? Okay. But I mean, really, would you rather have Josh Donaldson or Brett Lowry? When he traded Tulowitzki, or traded for Tulowitzki and LaTroy Hawkins, give up Jose Reyes, who's another guy that's pretty much on the hated list for Blue Jay fans. Jeff Hoffman, yes, he was a big prospect, #1 draft pick. What kind of career did he have? Nothing. And he got you all of these guys to make that serious run. And as far as him trading away the farm system, here's just from his last 3 drafts. These are the guys that Anthopoulos left behind. Marcus Stroman, Tim Meza, Danny Jansen, Jonathan Davis, Rowdy Tellez, Jordan Romano, Taylor Saucedo, Anthony Alford, Ryan Borucki, Travis Bergen. All of them had significant playing time in the Blue Jays organization after Anthopoulos decided not to stay on board after Shapiro took over for Paul Beeston. Oh, and by the way, he signed Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Should he be a hated guy? He should not. So that's one I don't understand. But I would say, from my observations, Blue Jay fans would like to see Alex Anthopoulos' mug up on Mount Duntmore as far representing the most hated, disliked players in Blue Jays history. Well, before I get my portrait added to Mount Duntmore, I'm going to leave off the show here. We'll be back in 2 weeks, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Please tune in this Thursday, Sunny Side of the Dome, Karen Suter, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. She's going to be talking about the CBA and things she wants to see from it. And of course, every Monday, it's the Jays from the Couch radio podcast. I'm the Fekless Wonder, Steve Fek. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you in 2 weeks.